it glitters is gold, and she's buying a stairway here. When she gets there, she knows if the stores are all closed, with a word she can get what she came. And she's buying a stairway here. There's a sign on the wall, but she wants to be sure, 'cause you know sometimes words have two meanings. In a tree by the brook, there's a songbird who sings. Sometimes all of our thoughts are misgiven. It makes me wonder. Makes me wonder. There's a feeling I get when I look to the west, and my spirit is crying for leaving. In my thoughts I have seen rings of smoke through the trees, and the voices of those who stand looking. Ooh, it makes me wonder. Ooh, it really makes me wonder. And it's whispered that soon, if we all call the tune, then the piper will lead us to reason, and a new day will dawn for those who stand long, and the forests will echo with laughter. Oh, 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 oh.
Good afternoon and welcome to the funeral service for Harold John Elliott, known to his family and friends as John. I would also like to acknowledge those who were unable to make it here today and who are joining us via live streaming. My name is Dennis Verkick and it is my privilege to be conducting this service for John today. We are here today to farewell a brother, an uncle, a good friend and colleague. On behalf of the Elliott family, I thank you for your presence here today as we commemorate with sorrow, but also with joy and thankfulness, the life of John. We grieve today with thoughts of John foremost in our minds. His passing has brought sorrow to his family and friends, particularly as the ties of love and friendship were so strong. But while we think of John's passing with sadness and regret, we should recall his life with respect and happiness. You see, nothing can detract from happiness and closeness you shared with John. Nothing can affect the happiness and the joy of life that John knew. Nothing can affect your love for him and his love for you. Family and friends can never be altered by time, circumstance, or even by death. The past, with all its meaning, is sacred and secure. Be grateful that John was part of your lives and let his influence, his character, his warmth, and his deeds live on. The following verse may be of some comfort for us all. Don't think of him as gone away. His journey has just begun. Life holds so many facets. The earth is only one. Just think of him as resting from the sorrow and the tears in a place of warmth and comfort where there are no days and years. Think how much he must be wishing that we could know today how nothing but our sadness can really pass away. And think of him as living in the hearts of those he touched, for nothing loved is ever lost, and he was loved so much. For the next few minutes, it will be my privilege to share with you the life of John. As well as sharing in John's life, we also share in our grief at his passing. And speaking with the family, it is clear they would not want you to grieve in hurt or pain, but concentrate on the joy that John has given, that John has received and that John has shared. Harold John Elliott was born in Canberra on the 23rd of February 1952. John's parents were Ted and Kath and sister Ray, now deceased, and survived by brothers Brian, Graham and sister Jan. John lived in Canberra all of his life and as a child attended North Ainslie Primary School, followed by Dixon High. He then went on to complete an apprenticeship specialising in carpentry and became the Carpenter of the Year for his graduation year in the 70s. He remained a carpenter for the rest of his working career. John had a great love for birds. In his early years, he had many budgies. Then later in life, upgraded and slowly phased them out and moved to canaries, which led him to being a member of the Canary Society. John also enjoyed a long stroll and was often found walking from his place in Ainslie to Dixon, as well as to the Ainslie shops. And when feeling adventurous, John would hike along the base of Mount Ainslie. John was very much a recluse and liked to keep to himself, but he loved to chat. Once on the phone, you just couldn't get him off. John was also known as an organised hoarder, keeping all of his belongings in perfect order and would know exactly where to go if he was required to look for something. John lived with and cared for his mum until she passed. He did a wonderful job of looking after her while she was still here. The Elliott family were all at ease because they knew he was doing such a great job, caring for her. His mum played a very, very big role in his life. I would now like to ask Tammy, John's niece, to share some words on behalf of John's brother Graham and his wife Robin from Queensland, who are unable to be with us today.
Hi all, thanks for coming. And on behalf of Uncle Graham and Auntie Robin, I've got a bit of a story for you all. Okay, oh sorry, just take my glasses off. Can't read with them. Okay, so sadly we can't be at John's service today, but we've written down some memories for some kind soul to read on our behalf. The memories are in no specific order. When learning his trade, John was named Apprentice of the Year, and the talent that won him this award was apparent in all the work he undertook throughout his life. He was a perfectionist and always took great pride in whatever he did, which meant that if he decided to do any jobs for you, they took longer than if you had hired somebody, but the finished work was superior in every way. We still recall the amazing cabinet he built. It consisted of rows and rows of tiny, perfectly fitting drawers. He made the built-in robes in our house in Holt and helped build the pergola at the back of our house at Maloney's. The latter being all the more amazing because he was prepared to drive to the coast to do the work. He enjoyed designing and building his 5-star canary room. We went down to give him a hand with the cement pour, but at the end of the day he needed many more helpers to deal with the enormous quantity of cement that was delivered. The driver was keen to keep the cement flowing and moved to another job. John had arranged with a guy he knew from down the street to come up and give us a hand, but unfortunately he was hungover from the night before and John was somewhat annoyed. While Mum looked on in despair, we were running back and forth with wheelbarrows, and then John and Graham had to start troweling and levelling the floor. Needless to say, the cement started to go off in some areas. Before they could deal with it, and John was crestfallen because there was definitely going to be some imperfections in the finish. Once all of the canaries were in residence, it became obvious that a lot of seed was being wasted. So on our next trip down, we were met with one of his favourite sayings, "You're looking at a genius." He then took great delight in demonstrating a winnowing machine he had constructed out of an old vacuum cleaner and other stuff to separate the canary seed from the husks, thereby recovering a lot of seed and saving quite a lot of money. A couple of years ago we bought him a birthday mug that said, "I have nothing to declare but my genius," and he was really chuffed. Okay. On another one of our trips, John decided that he and Graham would dig up the backyard near the toilet to clear some roots from the old terracotta sewerage pipes. The hole ended up over 1 metre across and 1 metre down. Graham was up to his chest in John's, and John's head was just above the surface. Mum couldn't believe the size of the hole when she came out. She just shook her head and went back inside. John had purchased a small jackhammer and they were rat-a-tat-tatting away all morning through the rock-hard ground. That day there happened to be an ACT Water Department gang laying pipes down Officer Crescent. 2 of the guys wandered cheekily into the yard to investigate, a sound they said they hadn't heard in years. This is people physically digging a hole instead of using ditch digging machines. Later that day, John and Graham then proceeded to encase all the pipes in cement to keep the roots out. It rivaled the bomb shelters of World War II. Some years earlier, Mum wanted an old plum tree removed from the yard, and John and Graham had the bright idea of pulling it out with our Toyota of the day. The Snatch'em strap was attached, and although there were many attempts and the 4-wheel drive stood up on the 2 wheels, the old plum tree refused to yield, and so John had to get the saw and shovel out. Once again, Mum closed her eyes and disappeared back into the house. He always liked us to stay at the house on our trips to Canberra. He would spend a few days moving all his stuff and vacuuming and dusting our room. Then on our arrival, he would always greet us with, "Oh, the freeloaders are back." One thing we learnt very quickly was not to go to the toilet at 2 or 3 a.m. John would still be sitting on his computer, and as we walked past him to get back to our room, he would want to show us something he'd found on YouTube. Once Graham's Parkinson's disease worsened, it was better for us to stay at Tall Trees where the bed and bathroom in the disabled suite were easier to use. But I'm not sure John believed our story. We used to go walking each night through Ainsley and Dixon, and John would point out any changes that had taken place. Of course, the walking would be at a brisk pace and there was no stopping for treats, but on occasions he would offer lemonade icy poles from the fridge when we got home. We gave him one of our mountain bikes when we left Canberra, and he loved to ride around Mount Ainsley looking at the kangaroos. On our last trips in 2018 and 2019, John's back was starting to give him a lot of pain. We noticed he hadn't mowed, and the yard and nature strip looked like a field of wheat. John sized Robin up as being the healthiest of the three and said, "The mower's waiting for you in the shed." Taking pity on him, it took me all morning just to do the nature strip, and he bought me a drink of cold cordial, probably to make sure I kept going. He said, "Don't forget behind the shed," and when I got that far, it was about 1 metre tall. I wondered what nasties might be living in this matted mess, and the old mower and her machine were both struggling. When it was finished, John inspected the work and jokingly said, "Not bad. I hope you are going to trim the hedges." I held my tongue. He also wanted to trim the old pine hedge, something we always helped him with, but now I explained that he had to do all the ladder work himself, and Graham and I would rake the debris and stuff into dozens or so bird seed bags, and just before we crammed the bags into the back of the Prado, he would have a look at the walnut tree up the back and endeavour to trim off anything that hung over the fence, no matter how high. Then off we'd go to the recycling centre in Mitchell, and as a reward, buy a sundae at Macca's at Dixon on our way home. He always enjoyed going shopping on our trips to Canberra. It might be to buy hardware at Fishwick, donuts in Civic, or household stuff in Belconnen. But one thing never changed. That was all the trips ended with a hot chocolate. That was the only reason for dilly-dallying. You bought what was on the list and then you went home. One day I wanted to buy some fabric to make a baby blanket, and I left Graham and John outside the store saying I shouldn't be too long. However, I just couldn't find what I was looking for and was in there for quite a while. I kept seeing these two faces peering through the window, trying to find me. John couldn't believe that anyone could be in a store for that long and still not buying something. Also, they were a bit peeved because the forecasted weather change had come through and a cold wind was whistling around their bare legs. John rang us at home one day and asked for a favour. He had seen a car for sale online in Brisbane and wanted Graham to inspect it and buy it if it was okay. We smiled when we saw the car, but Graham considered it a good buy, and a deal was done, and it was trucked to Canberra. Being an ex-limo with those plush lamb's wool seats, we bought him a chauffeur's cap to wear when he drove Mum around. John was always dreaming of how he would extend the house, and he would talk his ideas through with us. But this year he was thinking that the best solution might be to just sell the house and purchase a unit at Goodwin Homes for he and Ray. He said his eyesight was not good, and this combined with some other health concerns was making him realise that he may not be able to stay in the home in his old age. John was always looking online for new information on Parkinson's disease that might help Graham and Jan. He would ring us up or send us a link on new research and treatments. When Graham participated in a research program last year, we were already familiar with some of the tests, etc., because John had previously sent us information on this line of research. And finally, we, along with Brian, Jan and Ray, will always be grateful to John for taking on the role of Mum's carer. While we may have all thought that he was an unlikely person to be a carer, he did a wonderful job. Most of us don't really appreciate the levels of stress and the demands placed on an individual when caring for someone 24/7, until you have to do it yourself, like I have discovered in the past 2 years. John did a great job, including many very personal tasks, which initially would have come with some embarrassment for both him and Mum. And yes, as time went by, they did get on each other's nerves and have the odd blow up. But John gave Mum the greatest gift of staying at home until the end. Mum knew that she would never have to go into care, something that terrified her. And so on that note, we would like to say thank you, John, and we miss you. You genius, you. Graham and Robin, thank you. And Uncle John would be happy to know that his canaries have a new home, and 3 of my grandchildren are really happy with their new birdies. Sorry?
They've survived 2 weeks.
They survived 2 weeks at Stacey's place, so all going well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. I will now ask Jane, Jason's wife, to share their memories with us on behalf of Jason, John's nephew, and Jane. Please come forward, Jane. Thank you so much.
I'm reading this out on behalf of my husband Jason. He wanted to say a few things about his Uncle John, who he loves so much. We were so grateful we got to spend John's final few hours with him, and I can promise you, even though he wasn't feeling great, he was sitting in the waiting room in casualty, and he could have been anywhere. He was in his element. He had people to listen to him talking about the things he was passionate about. His last few hours were with people who loved him and were enjoying listening to his stories. He was laughing and joking, and none of us could have known it was the last time we'd be together. As I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, one of my earliest memories of John is when I used to visit as a child, and he used to take me into the aviary and show me his baby budgies. I remember when visiting, sitting at the kitchen table, John would have Streets Hearts and Cadbury chocolates in the freezer, and he'd sit and share them with us begrudgingly, as he called us freeloaders. This is the last memory I spoke of with John when we were at the hospital. Hang on, I've lost my spot. Sorry. Yeah. He used to enjoy showing off his coins and stamps when I was younger. Actually, he was even showing me his coins still a few weeks ago. When my son Callum was a toddler, John insisted on building a wooden pushcart for him full of wooden building blocks. The intricate building plans that he put into it were just amazing. Every little detail was written on the whiteboard, and nothing was started until every detail had been covered. Needless to say, the end result was perfection and something to be admired. And more special for me was the time I got with John helping him make it. It was priceless. John and I would often, both in the past and present, talk about computers, coins, gold, silver, and his conspiracy theories. We knew when we went in for a visit it wasn't going to be 30 minutes, it was going to be a minimum 6-hour visit, but that was okay with us. We enjoyed his company, and we knew he enjoyed ours because he wouldn't let us leave. Uncle John would have been the most organised hoarder I'd ever known. With every visit we made, he would say, "Follow me," and guide us around the house and garage, systematically pointing out all his prized possessions, just in case we forgot from our last visit. John loved telling us stories about when he was a young kid at school and how he was always in trouble. It started from his first day in kindy. He'd say how his mum would see her little Johnny walking up the road from school, always with a big note pinned to his jumper, always saying what he'd done wrong that day. He loved telling us about the penguins, as he called them, which were the nuns at the school, and how he tested their patients daily. He loved that he was a little bugger. He loved that he was always stirring up trouble, and as for his later school years, he always enjoyed telling us about how he used to wag school and go up to Mount Ainslie, how he'd always talk his way out of trouble with the teachers all the time, and basically how school was one long run of fun for him the whole way through. And things just continued as he got older. Once he started working, he just created mischief wherever he went. He loved He loved reliving those moments. He had the most wicked sense of humour, and he loved politics, and we loved sitting around constantly having a good laugh with him. He had such a great outlook on life. He lived it just the way he wanted to and was happy in his own skin, something that isn't easy to find in people these days. He loved and cared deeply about his family, telling stories about the things they all used to do together growing up, and I know these memories he treasured so much. He'd also talk about his days helping to build the new Parliament House, the church, Lake Gendera College, and told it all with such pride. He'd talk about his carpentry projects he had going up in the shed, and then drag us up there to help organise and move things around so he could start on the next stage of them. He didn't like to go many places later in his life, but he loved having people come to see him still. Mum was very close to John and would call him often. Her passing affected John greatly. Although we did visit and call John while Mum was still with us, I did make Mum a promise before she passed away that I would look over him. I told John of this promise too, and that I would not let him down. I hope I lived up to my promise. I was always checking in on him either by calling, visiting or emailing just to say hi and see if he needed anything. Got him to appointments, and finally he had enough trust in me to get him to the hospital when he felt he needed it. John would often share stories with me about his younger days going to the private bin, Woodstock and Mooseheads. He was awfully proud that he had an arrangement with a limousine driver for $5 to drive him home each night. He said, "You can't even get a taxi home for that." While we were in the waiting room at the hospital, John shared one last memory of his nights out while we were sitting in the hospital waiting room the night he passed away. It was a joke of sorts. One night at Woodstock, a woman that John and his mate Stuart were familiar with, Lottie, approached Stuart and said to him, "With 8 inches, you're in." Without missing a beat, Stuart replies, "I'm not folding it in half for anyone, love." We both were doubled over laughing with tears in our eyes. That encapsulated John, always having a laugh. On that note, I shall bid you farewell, Uncle John. I shall miss our long phone calls and visits. I hope you have found all the truths you've been searching for. I love you very much. Jason.
Thank you, Jane. Let us take some time now to reflect on our thoughts and recall our memories of John as we watch a visual presentation of his life and listen to some music his family have chosen as a tribute to him. Tenderly and reverently, we commit John's body to be cremated. We are grateful for the life that has been lived and for all that life has meant to us. We are glad John lived. We are glad we saw his face and felt the pressure of his hand. We cherish the memories of his words, his deeds, and his character. We cherish his friendship, and most of all, we cherish his love. We now leave the memory of our beloved John in peace. With enduring love and respect, we bid him farewell. May you find richness and example in your memories of John. May you find strength and support in your love for one another, and may you find peace in your hearts. We are now at the conclusion of the service. Upon your departure, the Elliott family would like you to please come forward, if you wish, to share a personal moment with John by placing a rosemary sprig on the coffin. They would also like to invite you all to join them for some light refreshments in the centenary room through these doors on my right to share memories and stories about John.
Take you home again, Kathleen, across the ocean wild and wide, to where your heart has ever been. Since birth you were my bunny bride. The roses all have left your cheeks. I've watched them fade away and die. Your voice is sad whene'er you speak, and tears bead in your loving eyes. Oh, I will take you back, Kathleen, to where your heart will feel no pain. And when the fields are fresh and green, I will take you to your home, Kathleen. I know you love me, Kathleen dear. Your heart was ever fond and true. I always feel when you are near that life holds nothing dear but you. The smiles that once you gave to me, I scarcely ever see them now, though many, many times I see the darkening shadow on your brow. Oh, I will take you back, Kathleen, to where your heart will feel